Back in the 1890s, a tiny Florida settlement stood on the brink of becoming something much bigger. Not just a town, but a boomtown. Streets buzzing with industry, rail lines humming with commerce, all because of a sudden rush for something called white gold. For a brief, blazing moment, Oriole was poised for prosperity, and then, almost as quickly, it vanished. So what went wrong? How does a community built on hope, hard work, and mineral wealth simply dissolve back into the woods? Today, we're walking through what's left and listening to what the land still remembers. Before the boom, before the mines, before the money, Oriole was just wilderness. In the early 1880s, this area, now part of the Withlacoochee State Forest, was remote even by Florida frontier standards. Thick forests, sandy soil, swamps and river crossings that made every supply run an ordeal. The families who settled here, among them the Giddens, weren't chasing riches. They were chasing stability. They cleared land, built homesteads, planted orange groves, and relied on one another to survive. The Withlacoochee River marked both opportunity and isolation. Crossing it by ferry was the only real link to the outside world. In 1884, the settlement took a meaningful step forward. A post office, established by J.A. Clarkson, Jr., officially placed Oriole on the map. That single building meant connection, mail, commerce, recognition. For several quiet years, Oriole existed as a small, self-reliant agricultural community. No one yet suspected that the ground beneath their feet was holding something far more valuable than oranges. That something was phosphate. In the late 19th century, phosphate became one of the most valuable industrial resources in the country, a critical ingredient in fertilizer and the fuel behind America's rapidly expanding agricultural economy. When large deposits were discovered across Florida, land values exploded almost overnight, and Oriole sat right on top of it. By around 1890, phosphate operations were underway in the area, tied to the Oriole Phosphate Mining Company. The transformation was swift. Forest gave way to excavation, quiet trails became industrial paths, the land was carved open in pursuit of profit. This wasn't small-scale digging. The landscape was reshaped, deep pits torn into the earth, tramways built to haul material, and processing sites established nearby. Even today, the land bears those scars. Water-filled ponds that were once mining pits, raised ridges where carts or rail spurs likely ran, and scattered industrial remnants hidden under leaf litter. Oriole's population swelled to roughly 100 residents, no small number for such an isolated place. A railroad connection finally linked the town to larger markets, allowing phosphate to move out and money to move in. For a fleeting moment, Oriole was thriving. This was its golden age. The future looked limitless. The white gold seemed endless, but boomtowns are fragile things. The first cracks didn't come from the mines. They came from the sky. The winter of 1894 through 1895 delivered what history now calls the Great Freeze. It wasn't a single cold snap. It was a devastating sequence. In December 1894, freezing temperatures destroyed the citrus crop. Then came a deceptive warm spell, coaxing damaged trees into new growth. When a second, harsher freeze hit in February 1895, it finished the job. Trees split, sap froze, entire groves died. Before the freeze, Florida produced millions of boxes of citrus each year. Afterward, production collapsed to a fraction of that. For agricultural communities like Oriole, the impact was catastrophic. Even with mining income, the town's economic foundation was suddenly unstable. Families who depended on farming lost everything almost overnight. And then came the second blow. As Oriole struggled to recover, illness swept through the region. Influenza, deadly in an era before antibiotics or modern medicine, cut especially hard through rural communities. The evidence lies quietly nearby in the Oriole Cemetery, also known as the Giddens Homestead Cemetery. It is one of the oldest burial grounds in Hernando County, and walking among its stones tells a painful story. Clusters of children's graves, short lifespans carved into weathered markers. The combined weight of economic collapse and widespread illness was too much. Families began to leave. Mines slowed down, then stopped. Industry moved on to richer or more accessible deposits elsewhere. In 1898, the post office closed. That closure wasn't just symbolic, it was final. Without it, Oriole ceased to function as a town. By the early 1900s, Oriole was effectively gone. For a short while, ranchers reused the cleared land into the 1920s. They left behind subtle traces: a windmill standing watch, fragments of fencing, old roads pressed into the soil. Those roads still matter. One of them once linked Oriole directly to the cemetery, a quiet path between daily life and final rest. Others carried logs, supplies, and phosphate, routes of work and survival that now disappear into the trees. Eventually, even the ranchers moved on, and the forest returned. Today, Oriole is a ghost town hidden in plain sight. The mines are ponds. The rail line is a bike path. The industrial sites are rusted hints, barrels, machinery fragments, foundations that make you stop and wonder what once stood there. Nature has done what nature always does, reclaimed the space. But Oriole's story hasn't vanished. It's written into the land itself, in the water-filled pits, the forgotten roads, the windmill that refuses to fall, and the quiet cemetery where generations rest beneath moss and oak. Oriole reminds us how quickly fortune can turn, how boom can become silence, how progress, when tied to a single resource, is always temporary. Florida is full of places like this, towns that flared bright, burned fast, and faded into memory. The question isn't whether these places still exist, it's whether we're willing to notice them. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe forgotten places still have something to say, hit that like button and subscribe for more Forgotten Fridays. And tell me in the comments, have you ever stumbled across a place like this? What did the land leave behind for you to find?